Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to another session. Today we're going to be looking at prayer times. Our author Imam Sharam Bululi says, the ritual prayer, the times of the ritual prayer are 5. The time of Fajr begins with the entrance of true dawn and ends at sunrise, i.e. the start of sunrise when the top of the disk emerges above the horizon. Now, he's implying true dawn. If he's saying true dawn, then he must imply something that may be a false dawn. So let's have a look at what false dawn is. False dawn, also known as the zodiacal light, made from interplanetary dust particles on the ecliptic, visible in March-April in the northern hemisphere, visible during the spring and autumn equinox. What false dawn is during certain times of the year, especially at the equinoxes. So you've got the spring equinox and the autumn equinox. We're aligned directly with the ecliptic. And at that stage, interstellar dust particles that are out in the solar system, they get reflected back from the dust. The sun's rays get reflected back from that dust, and it permeates our horizon, and it gives the effect of a dawn. It's known as false dawn. And how do we know it's false dawn? Because the sun, well, the emerging light that you see doesn't arise like it would if you were to have proper dawn, where you'd get like the whiteness appearing on the horizon. You get a light that moves up that way. So it moves up. And the best way to see this is if you're out in the countryside. In the cities, it's a very faint light, and you probably your whole life you're going to go through without seeing this light. But this light is easily observable, especially if you're living in the countryside or in the desert. So the light rises like that, as you can see in the picture. And it's false dawn, because after a while that light will then disappear, and then darkness will resume for a few hours, and then the real dawn will appear. So this light is known as false dawn, Subh al-Kazib. And we don't take this into consideration. That's not the start of Fajr time. True start of Fajr time is known as true dawn. True dawn is when you've got the light. If you look towards the horizon, so you know the sun's going to arise this way. And if you look towards the horizon, you're going to get a white light appear. And that white light will get brighter and brighter and brighter. And the sky will start to become bluer and bluer and bluer, until it becomes like a reddish color, and then an orange color, and then a yellow color, and then when the solar disk appears, the bright light of day becomes like a whitish color. So the start of Fajr time is basically when you look towards the horizon and you can see the white light spread along the horizon. In the distance, you get the white light spreading on the horizon, and that's the start time for Fajr. So I made a little doodle diagram here. Let's have a look at that. So the time for Fajr, so here if we look at my diagram, you can see the horizon. So you can see the east and the west where the sun rises from. So the solar disk, basically Fajr starts, you'll see that 18 degrees below the horizon is the start for Fajr time. So when the sun is 18 degrees, the solar disk is 18 degrees below. If I've got a ruler here, I could show you. So we've got a ruler here. So this is our horizon. The sun is 18 degrees below the horizon. So basically at Maghrib time, it goes down and it travels around the earth and then back up again. When the sun is 18 degrees below the horizon, at that point, you shall see the white light appear on the horizon. Now, as it moves up and up and up, the color gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And then that's the start of Fajr time. In northern climes, that's 3.5 hours, 4 hours almost, right? And then once the top of the solar disk emerges above the horizon, at that point, you can no longer pray Fajr. Now, in my diagram here, we've got the 18 degrees and then the 15 degrees. Both times are acceptable. It depends on which country you live in. In the northern climes, it's better to stick with the 18 degrees, is because the way our sun moves, it doesn't really move like up and down, up around the earth and back up again. It moves at an angle because we're very high. We're very high. So the way we're positioned when the earth spins, right, we don't get a direct sunrise and a sunset. It's at a very steep angle. So as a result, it gets very confusing between the redness. Where does the redness finish and merge with the whiteness? So as a result, the 18 degrees is the strong time, and it's the better time, and it's easily visible on the horizon as well. So Fajr time ends when the solar disk appears above the horizon. The time for Dhuhr begins at midday and ends when the shadow of any object is twice its length. Okay, so let's have a look at the doodle diagram here. So we've got, again, the horizon, right? Now the sun came up at Fajr, the sun carried on till it got to the toppermost point. It gets to the zenith. The zenith is the highest point the sun is in the sky. In the equator, that's going to be directly overhead. If you're north or south, it's going to be off. It's going to be off a bit. At that point, the shadows are at the shortest length. So again, if you're close to the equator, there will be no shadow. It'll be like this. If you stand straight, there will be no shadow. Cars, buildings, trees, and human beings, they will have zero shadow. If you move more north or south from the equator, you're going to get a shadow appearing. The smallest length of the shadow, that's when the sun is directly at the highest point, right? As it's moved past that point, a few minutes after is the time for Dhuhr. So in my diagram here, you've got the highest point, and then you've got where it slightly moves. And now the shadows, what happens is if the sun rises here, this is my east. If the sun rises here and the sun starts to move up, as the sun comes up, if somebody's standing here, they're going to cast a very long shadow this way, a very, very long shadow. As the sun rises higher and higher, the shadow is going to get shorter and shorter and shorter. Midday, the shadow is going to be at its shortest length. And then, as it moves past its zenith, as it starts to move into the western part of the sky, my shadow is going to, from zero, it starts to grow this way. Starts to grow and grow and grow. Right? The point it starts to grow, just at that point, is when you can pray. There's actually a point there of a few minutes between either side when there's no prayer allowed. Right? The point when the sun is at its highest, there's no prayer allowed. So if you wait a few minutes, the Dhuhr starts. It's known as Zawal time. You'll see when you go to mosques, it'll normally be written over there that this is the Zawal time. Do not pray your prayer during this time. No prayer is accepted during the Zawal time, the highest point in the sky. So now once the shadows have started to lengthen, as they carry on lengthening, once they get to one shadow's length of my body plus my original shadow, or two shadows' lengths, that's the start time of Asr, which we're going to look at now. Okay, so we've established the time of Dhuhr. Let's have a look at the time for Asr. So the time for Asr starts at the point on which there is disagreement and ends at sunset when the disk is completely below the horizon. So Imam Abu Hanifa says two shadow lengths. Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad, the primary students of Imam Abu Hanifa, they gave one shadow length. Both opinions are strong. Both opinions can be followed. Let's have a look now what we exactly mean here. So again, we've got the horizon. Okay, so we've got, say I've got, as in my example here, I've got a pole that's sticking up from the horizon, and now say my pole is sticking up 1 meter. It's casting a shadow of 1 meter. So at noon, because I'm in the northern hemisphere, my pole casts a shadow of 1 meter. So now as the sun starts to move from Dhuhr time towards Maghrib, the shadow is going to get longer and longer and longer and longer. Now according to the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa, my shadow needs to be 2 lengths. So originally, if my pole is 1 meter, my shadow needs to be 2 meters, right? 2 meters plus the original length of the shadow that was showing at noon. Let me make that clear. So the pole sticks up from the ground 20 centimeters. The pole is 1 meter tall. So according to Imam Abu Hanifa, 2 lengths of the object, that would be 2 meters plus the 20 centimeters. I hope you've got that. According to the two Imams, one length of the object. So that would be 1 meter, 20 centimeters. So that's the time when Asr starts. Now there is a disagreement. What do we do? You can pray in the Hanafi school. There are 2 opinions. You can follow any opinion. Generally in the northern hemisphere, all across Europe, in England, Turkey, moving on towards the subcontinent and then Central Asia, they're Hanafi countries. So they follow the later Asr time, where the shadows are 2 lengths. Right? But if you're in a country where everybody collectively prays Jama'ah in the mosque, like in Egypt or like in the Gulf countries or in Jordan or somewhere, where they pray in the one shadow length time, then you join them because you'd catch the Jama'ah in the mosque, and to avoid disagreement as well, to have respect for the opinion of the other Imams, because the other schools also pray with the one shadow length time, you would then pray with them. However, if you chose to pray the second length time, there isn't a problem. And in England, most mosques, they pray the later time for Asr. So time for Maghrib. Now the time for Maghrib starts at that point and ends at the disappearance of the red light according to the position given for fatwa. So again, there's a difference of opinion of when Maghrib time finishes, right? Not when it starts, when it finishes. And we'll discuss that now. We'll have a look at the doodle diagram here. So again, we've got the horizon. Okay, so we've got the horizon. Now the sun rose in the morning here. Dhuhr, Asr, and now it's setting. Right. The minute the solar disk hits the horizon, that's not the time of Maghrib. Remember, Fajr, the solar disk hit the horizon, Fajr ended. With Maghrib, the solar disk hits the horizon, but it needs to carry on until the toppermost tip of the solar disk has disappeared below the horizon. Now that is the start of Maghrib time, when the solar disk totally disappears below the horizon. Now Maghrib time carries on until, what did we say here? There are two opinions of how long you have to pray Maghrib. There is, again, it's going to be a reverse of what happened in the morning. So you've got the sky now, you're going to get, the solar disk is set here, the sky is going to be like a brightish color, it's going to be yellow, and then the yellow turns into like a red, and then the red becomes like a darkish, like a light bluish, whitish line, and then obviously this side of the sky will start to get violet, blue, and then that will move this way. And then so that you've got two times. You've got the times of the Imams, the two Imams, which is when the redness of the sky disappears. And then you've got the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa, which is when the blue, when the white band vanishes. It's actually, when I say white band, it's a white band, but everything around it now becomes like a light blue, and then that part, it gets darker and darker and darker, and that side of the sky is going to be blue. So again, both of them are very strong opinions, very, very strong opinions. In northern climes, there is actually an issue. It's better to stick to the later time. You will find that most northern countries, by default, they're Hanafi anyway, and they tend to stick to the later time, because the problem is again, if you're in the Gulf countries or in any country that's closer towards the equator, the sun tends to rise like from here, and it goes every day. It rises up, down, up, down. Whereas in the northern climes, it rises this way and it will set like that. So if that's your horizon, it will rise up like that and it will set like that as well. So as a result, sometimes there is 3 hours between the sun being 18 degrees and coming up. So your Fajr lasts about 3 hours. Likewise, your Maghrib, there's a problem with Maghrib as well in the summer months. So like that, there's no clear distinction or definition of where the redness actually disappears into the whiteness or the blueness, where the redness disappears into the whiteness. You never know that clearly, right? You will always see signs of one or the other. Why? Because again, the way our sun is setting, it takes literally hours for it to go down far enough where you can clearly identify where the distinction is, and then even clearly where it becomes night, right? That's why in the summer months, and we look at this, we have to fix our prayer times. So as a result, most of the ulama, the Hanafi ulama, have given the fatwa that especially in the northern hemisphere, places like England, Canada, the United States, Europe, you follow the later time of Imam Abu Hanifa, where the whiteness disappears. The blue-white disappears and the sky is completely black now. Isha starts when the sky is completely black. Because when the white light vanishes, that's it. That's complete darkness. The time for Isha and Witr is from that point until the starting point of Fajr. So at the point where the whiteness disappears, so the whiteness, it's like a zip. You're zipping the light out and that's it, it's black sky now. Right? The whiteness heralds the darkness that's following, the deep dark blue and the black, and that's it. When it hits the horizon, it's over, time for Isha has started when the whiteness disappears from the horizon. So it stays from there until Fajr. We mentioned Fajr, 18 degrees again. At the point when the sun is 18 degrees below the horizon, the white light appears. The minute the white light appears on the horizon, your Isha time is finished, and now your Fajr time has started. In the winter months, that's actually quite long. In the summer months, it's very short, And in the summer months, due to where you live, it becomes very, very problematic because you technically don't get an Isha time, because you don't get true darkness. And we'll discuss what happens in those situations. It must be noted here that you cannot pray your witr prayer before you pray your Isha prayer. You have to pray your fard, Isha prayer, and then you pray your witr. You cannot switch them over. Now the problem I mentioned is known as perpetual twilight in higher climes. Now London sits at a latitude of 51, Glasgow sits at 55. So in the summer months, for example, if the time for Isha, the time for Maghrib in London is say 9:23, I think it is, 9:30, which is what's happening nowadays. If you go more north, you'd actually add around, especially in Glasgow, Scotland, you'd have to add around half an hour more to that time. So their Maghrib would be about 10 o'clock. Now the problem with this is because the prayer is so late. For 2 months of the year, it's never completely dark. It's 2 months in London. It's from I think it's the 24th of May until the 24th or the 22nd of July, something like that, around about those dates. And as you go more and more north, the days increase, right, on either side. So when you get to Scotland, it's more. It could be up to 4 months even. Here's a little chart that I took from Her Majesty's Nautical Almanac. It's an excellent site, by the way, if you want to determine your prayer times also. So here are different locations in England. So St. Helier from 8 June to 4 July, right? There's perpetual twilight. What's known is the sun never goes 18 degrees below the horizon, which means that you're never going to get a completely dark sky. So Isha only starts when the sky is dark. If the sky is not dark, then how do you get an Isha time? It's technically still Maghrib. In some areas, you can visibly see it's bluish color. So in situations like that, we have to do something, but let's run through this list. So if we keep going down Southampton, which is below London, 26th of May, so I'm guessing London would be 24 then. 26th of May to 17 July, yep, makes sense. London would be about 24 July the 24th. You've got Birmingham here, which is more north, 18 of May to 25th of July. Leeds, 13, it's more north. Edinburgh, 5 May. So all of May, all of June, all of July. 3 months, 3 complete months of perpetual twilight. And especially when you go up north, you've got 4 months. You've got April the 22nd for Lerwick, way up north. So in situations like that, what do? Special dispensations for times when there's no, when we have astronomical twilight, when there's no darkness, complete darkness. And there's actually 4 opinions, and it goes beyond the scope of this course. But the best thing to do is follow the local fatwa from your mosque. So whatever time your mosque prays those times, right, you will find that they've either fixed the times for those 2 months, or there's 4 methods basically, and they follow one of those 4 methods. It's Aqrab al-Bilad, Nisf al-Layl, 1/7 of the night, and you fix the time. So the last time that you actually knew where you had a complete Isha time, you fix that date basically. So you fix the time for Isha, and then that stays for 2 months, and then they do something with the timetable whereby as you get closer to it, they start to add on time, and then once you're released from perpetual twilight, it fits back into your normal timetable. So you basically follow your local mosque, and they will cater for this. So that's it for today. Thank you very much. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.